Welcome to the Legion Strength and Conditioning Podcast. You can check us out at legionsc.com or follow us on Instagram at legion.sc.
All right, guys, welcome to the Legion Podcast. I'm joined today by Luke. Luckily, we don't have to deal with Todd this week, so you get to listen to two handsome British men talking about CrossFit. So we're going to be talking through the kind of recent announcements on the changes to the CrossFit Games season. Obviously, everything's still kind of rolling out in terms of announcements and how things are going to play out, but it seems to be forming up to be an interesting season in terms of how all the different kind of levels are going to break down. We're used to seeing this kind of three-tiered open regionals games or open sectionals games, or sanctionals, I guess, not sectionals. But now we're seeing, open, quarterfinals, semifinals games, potentially a last chance qualifier in there, as well as other events outside of the CrossFit season still going ahead. So Luke, why don't you break down the kind of structure that we're going to see this year?
So the obviously with the mixture of announcements coming from the CrossFit Games website, certain podcasts with Mr. Castro, and also his very enjoyable Instagram posts. John and I have tried to break down what we see and what has been announced. But first thing is the Open will be initially for 3 weeks. So there'll be 3 workouts. This will be starting a little bit later. From the Open, you then have the quarterfinals. The quarterfinals will be taking roughly 10% of people. By the way, the Open can be performed at home. There's been sort of a bit of an equipment list sent out. So you need a jump rope or skipping rope if you're from the UK, barbell, dumbbell, box, and a pull-up station. So you only need this equipment to compete in the first part. And then moving into the quarterfinals, this is going to be performed at a gym. So you're probably going to see certain things like Concept 2, maybe workouts that require a little bit more space. So walking lunges, handstand walks. I'm not 100% sure they're going to program that for the first part. And then after the quarterfinals, it then goes on to in-person events, which is going to be the semifinals. And the semifinals are spread out. There are 10 events, but they're spread out over 6 different continents. And John has made a guesstimation that we're probably going to see one event in Africa, one event in Asia, one event in the Pacific, one event in South America, 2 in Europe, and 4 in North America. And these events are going to be playing out quite like the old regional events. However, they are aligning themselves with some of the sanctional events that have been of the 2019 season. So within those events, you're going to have a little bit more alignment in terms of how they're programmed. They will be different programmed events, and I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be going back to HQ and then be the HQ giving the sort of go ahead to it. But there's going to be expectations around, okay, we're looking at a couplet within this time domain, a couplet within this time domain, a longer workout. And then as well as that, I do remember listening on a podcast with Dave Castro. He said that he also wants the different events to be able to use what is around them to sort of give you a bit of an idea. At Strength in Depth this year, they did a open water rowing event because that was performed in London on the Thames. So there's also going to be a little bit of difference within the events based on sort of what they have access to. So I think it's quite good because it provides a lot more structure than what has been the case for the last 2 years. I think for the last 2 seasons, it's been pretty difficult for people to compete in the sport. I do believe that it's sort of created a bit of it's created opportunities in certain places, but I do believe it's cut off a lot of opportunities for people who are really serious about competing, want to do well, but they may be in, a bit more of a stacked region or area of the world, like the US, for example. So you're seeing a lot of people who are good athletes, and they're sort of all just trying to get to one of these sanctional events, and sometimes those sanctional events are pretty much just filled up with the same people as well. So I think sort of having this geographical split of the CrossFit Games, I do believe that's going to create a little bit more opportunity for people, and I think it's probably going to give you'd probably say it's going to give you a little bit more of a fair representation of what is going on around the world within CrossFit and the different levels than we saw in 2019. Although that was great to see people from all over the world. Obviously, gave certain people certain opportunities within the within the athlete and also the coach. But I think that it's important that the people who are really putting in the hours into the sport are getting the recognition that they deserve. I think let's go over what we're going to be looking at in terms of like the first part of the Open and then also the quarterfinals. I think that if we're looking at 10% of each region as such making it to the quarterfinals, we're probably looking at, you can sort of do some quick simple math and figure out 10% of your gym population that are signed up to the Open and figure out who is potentially going to be on the roster for quarterfinals within your gym. But I think that you're probably looking at the person who has a lot of the skills. We're probably not we're not seeing things like muscle ups, and probably not going to see handstand walks and really, really heavy weights in the first part. So they're sort of going to be those people who have the basic skills of CrossFit, a good level of capacity, and those athletes, I would say, are probably generally going to be the ones making it to the quarterfinals. What do you think about the quarterfinals? I mean, John, you've got you're not affiliated. You got a gym. You doing the Open?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So
we'll
you're going to be handling this on a bit of a different level. So yeah, what do you reckon about quarterfinals?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting in the sense that the kind of athletes who would normally qualify for the games or for sanctioned events or for the old regionals, whatever it was, those kind of people are going to be completing the first level of the Open, probably just as part of their normal training. I work with quite a few people that are eyeing up qualifying for semifinals, and we are treating the Open as just part of their normal training. To finish top 10% in your region, for a lot of people who are used to competing in CrossFit, that's going to be something they don't need to think about. It's such a large number of people. And if you can look at your individual placing from last year, at least for your country, you may not be able to pull it up for your region as it is now. But you can look, 10% is kind of a big chunk of people. There was like 400,000 people that did the Open last year. So 40,000 people worldwide are going to qualify for the next stage. And like Luke said, picking out those kind of top 10% of people in your gym, and those are likely the ones that are going to be doing the quarterfinals. I think what we'll see is on the bottom end of those qualifiers, you'll see some people who miss out or get in just based on the nature of the events. So if the Open is 3 weeks, so realistically 3 to 4 events, I feel like there might be a double scored event within that, even if it's not a specific like separation within the events. But those 3 to 4 events could definitely fit into someone's wheelhouse who would have finished lower than someone else in the old open, who no longer qualifies for the quarterfinals. You reduce the number of workouts in a test, and there's going to be more opportunity for variance in those results. The more tests there are, the more likely you are to find the fittest in that group. And that's what you see at the games. You see 10, 12, 15 events across the course of the games. The more events there are, the fitter the people turn up. You see Fraser, who's maybe sitting in third after day one. Well, he's going to end up in first because overall he's the fittest. So the less tests there are, the more opportunity it is for, I don't want to say the wrong people qualifying, but it's not necessarily just going to be the fittest. But the reality is it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. You're just going to see on a local level some people be like, oh, I'm fitter than this person, but they qualified and I didn't. Which I think will make it fun for intra-gym relationships for some people. But
make it fun or make drama.
A little bit of drama.
Yeah, but hey, everyone loves a bit of drama.
I think once you get to the quarterfinals, obviously the top athletes in the world have to perform then. There's no other opportunity for them after that. So that weekend, I think they said Thursday to Monday, so basically just like a normal open week or whatever it's called. We're going to see some results differing from previous years. People that have been qualifying to regionals for a long time maybe don't make it out into the semifinals because they weren't prepared for a weekend where they had to do 2 events or 3 events. Maybe in the open they relied on repeating every workout to get where they get to. And there might be a little bit of a shake-up in the norm of who qualifies, but I'm really interested to see how they decide who qualifies and which event they go to.
Yeah, I think the quarterfinals, it presents. They can go obviously 2 ways. It can be just one workout, and that's pretty much just going to be the usual open scenario, and you essentially just say it's like the open having 4 workouts. You have obviously the chance of there being a double scored workout in the first part. You could potentially have a double scored workout in the second part in the quarterfinals. You could also have 2 events. You could also have 3 events. So I think if they go with more in the quarterfinals, this might play into those individuals who train just at like a higher volume year round, might be looking to compete, because in the open you do have those individuals that just have a good skill set, are able to tap into one really, really hard effort, potentially 2, and sometimes it plays into those individuals' sort of favor. But for those people who have a more broad range of skills, who may not do well on what has typically been the first workout of the open for the last several years, which has always been like a simple get the work done type situation. They may not be doing well on that, but they may be doing better on the heavier, the more skilled workouts, the sort of higher volume in terms of challenging movements and things like that. But I do actually hope that is something that they do. I think that with the separation now, they can have that feel of inclusivity. They've also created levels within the open. You have equipment free, which is a separate competition, it should be. And then you have RX, scaled, and foundations, and this way you then feel like you can create potential progression for people who are coming in the gym. For those people who are just looking to get into the sport, they have a bit of an idea of where they're at, but it just creates more structure for people to be able to then see where they're at. And there's definitely I've definitely had conversations with a few athletes of mine, which is sort of like, okay, let's use this Open, let's use these quarterfinals and this whole situation as a bit of a figure out where you are in the current situation of competing. They're individuals who have had their sights set on high level local competitions and potential sanctional competitions. So they're sort of using the Open to do that. I do think it will be interesting to see how they split things up for the continents. But generally speaking, I think that since Eric Rose has been in charge, you can obviously see that there's a lot more direction. Things are a little bit more, well thought out on the sort of surface of things. You can see that they're operating a lot more, just a lot more of a robust nature, and now people actually have an easier time figuring out where they're at, what they need to do, and I think that that's important to sort of create buy-in for a lot of people, because one of the biggest challenges for people out there when they are competing isn't necessarily like getting the training done or doing what they need to do, but a lot of it, and I work with a lot of athletes where the first part of their sort of journey is spent figuring out what they actually need to work on, trying to sort of navigate the sport. Is a bit chaotic. It's a little bit, okay, well, what do we do? You can sort of see that there's a lot of people within the sport who tend to just do really well in those situations, and they tend to thrive. But, for those people who want to have something that's a little bit more planned out, and as well as that athlete longevity, it's really important to have structure and just have something in place where people can, if, say, for example, they wanted just to take some time off, they can take some time off and know that the Open is going to be on this date and this is the structure for next year, as opposed to, just trying to get to as many competitions as possible. I think, there was a few games athletes last year who were like, I'm just going to take a season off because, I think it was maybe in 2019, they were just like, this is hectic, I can't deal with it. Some people thrive in that situation, some people don't. But what do you think about the semi-finals? I feel like this is a resurrection of regionals. I have been thinking about relocating like I did years back, just to just to qualify somewhere in some place. But yeah, I mean, do you think we're probably going to start seeing something like that? Because that was definitely a thing that people did back in 2012 to 2014.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine so. I think it's probably too late for people to do it for this year. It's difficult because, honestly, the people, I think you're going to see it less now. I think you'll see it less because the people that can qualify for the games, kind of doesn't matter what region they're in. Like there's that bubble for, semifinals to games where you're going to have, let's just assuming the top 5 people qualify for the games. Those 6 to 10 places, 6th place to 10th place are always going to be on that bubble. And maybe if they move to a different area, they're going to qualify. But the reality is I think people have realized that, hey, if I'm finishing, 20th, 30th, 40th in the semifinals, it doesn't matter where I am. Like, yeah, I could move to China and maybe I'm giving myself a slightly better shot. But I don't think there were many cases where people successfully did that in the past. Especially if there's reduced numbers qualifying for the games. So I'm approximating or guessing that there's going to be 6 people, top 6 in the semifinals in North America and Europe qualify for the games, 5 in Australia, and then 3 in South America, Africa, and Asia. And the athlete that finishes, 7th in one of the North American semifinals, are they going to finish top 3 in South America? Maybe. Is it worth moving to South America for? Probably not. I just don't think there's I don't think it's going to happen as frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the sport has developed now, and you obviously have people. Well, I mean, you have people who aren't necessarily great, amazing athletes, but like they have a huge social media presence, and they get whatever. I mean, like people have different reasons for why they do the sport, and you obviously have those people who are just hell bent on the sport. Some people who are sort of wanting recognition for something, and you have people now who have a bit of a platform as to how like they can do that. And I think that like there's a little bit less higher stakes type stuff in terms of moving and things like that. I mean, I definitely remember living out in the Middle East, and after the 2014 regionals, it was I remember it was like over the course of the summer, it was all these games athletes from the States and from Europe were just like moving to Dubai, and I was like, shit. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen anymore in that sense. I think I was mainly cracking a funny one there, John. But I think that you I think that it can either open things up for people, or it can sort of like just make the games sort of very much the same people who are competing. Because I think there was a period of time where at the games you could sort of guess. I think they had like 50 people, but you could guess who was going to be like number one down to not in terms of rankings, but you could guess it. Let's say 35 people that were going to be there at the competition. It might bring things back to that level where things are a little bit less open. But with that said, the sport is so much bigger than what it used to be. So the people who are going to be sort of, you can have people coming out of the woodwork everywhere. And I hope that this new structure definitely just makes it. I think it, as much as you want to create bravado and you want to create a bit of hype and do different things and experiment, stuff like that, you also want to give people something to train for, something to sort of plan out over a long period of time. As coaches, we want it. We want to be like, okay, let's not take things year to year. Let's look at this over the course of 3 years. And, if you actually are really serious about getting to, what is going to be like the semifinals, it's going to take that type of commitment to sort of go through it. And I think that it's going to be better for people who take this seriously as a sport. It might not be as, you might not have as many obstacle course race people qualifying for the games, but I don't think anyone is going to be too sad about that.
Yeah, I think Castro has already expressed his displeasure with the fact that Hunter was there that year.
Yeah, that was a bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's frustrating as a coach, the kind of the level with which detail has been coming out. Initially they announced the Open was going to be 17th of February. And so as a coach for my athletes, I'm planning around that. Like, okay, I work backwards from that date, figure out when people need to peak, when we need to have kind of easier weeks, when we need to switch to training focus. And then, I had athletes literally just about to start that training cycle. And then Castro announces that, hey, the Open's like 3 weeks later. But the Open for a lot of athletes doesn't actually matter. The score doesn't carry over into the quarterfinals. You just need to finish top 10%. So all of a sudden we're going from, hey, we need to be ready for February 17th to we need to be ready for April 5th, which is a big shift in training. It's a big shift in focus. As a coach, that's pretty difficult. And for those, I don't want to say elite athletes, because, the people that have qualified for the games for the last 5 years are likely they're still going to have to work hard, but they're going to be not necessarily struggling to qualify for the semifinals. But it's those kind of in-between athletes who are like, maybe they could make the games, or they qualified for some sanctioned events last year and did pretty well. Those type of athletes, everything switches. The mindset that they need to have going into their training, the way their training is shaped to make sure that they're not, peaking way too early in the season, because the good athletes aren't getting close to peaking for the Open. They're not. Like I say, I'm not intending on having my athletes treat the Open like the Open of previous years. I'm not going to have them, get set up to do just that workout on the day, then watch their video and strategize for a second attempt. No, they're doing that workout as part of their day's training, probably after doing some other kind of strength or skill or whatever they have planned for the day. But I think that's going to be interesting for a lot of people, is finding out when they need to peak and how they need to structure both their training and the way they handle the competition workouts. Because some people will be able to cruise through the quarterfinals as well. It's a small group, but if it's top, let's say in North America, assuming 4 events, 40 to 50 people, they need to be top 160 to 200 in North America. For some people, that's not going to be a problem. Likely the perennial games athletes and probably a few others who are in the mix there. They don't need to be too concerned with it, but they still need to perform. Others, they need to be peaking April 5th, and if they're burnt out by semifinals, then it is what it is. So I think it's going to be an interesting season. I like the potential it has, and I like the way it kind of can build across the next few years. But I think we're going to see a little bit of a shake-up next season based on how this season goes.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some. It is interesting because I think some people have gone in with the mindset of okay, well, I have a couple of weeks of extra prep work, so I should just carry on as normal and just try to fill it in. But I think that one of the things I've told people is saying that okay, well, we're going to actually push things back, and what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on starting this period of training, quote unquote, open prep, and we're going to focus on making sure that you're as ready as you can be for that. You're not. I think far too many people feel like they lose time on their developing and progressing their training. And I think if you're sort of coming out of maybe a bit of a break over the Christmas New Year period, and you're looking to get ready for the Open or get ready for the quarterfinals, it might be that you don't necessarily have to jump straight into all of the open simulation style workouts that you're going to go into. I think maybe just getting yourself accustomed to a bit of intensity, making sure you're in a good spot to start that training. But yeah, I think the having things wiped at quarterfinals is going to be, it would be super interesting. And it just definitely, I think it will favor those individuals who take this a little bit more seriously as a sport. But yeah, it'll be a cool year. Well, I hope it'll be a cool year.
This is all with the assumption that everything actually happens,
Yeah.
I think what's going to be interesting is if we hit that April 5th weekend and some countries have their gyms closed, what happens then?
Come on, John, you got to have a little bit of hope here, mate.
Well, I just think they need to be realistic. The Open has been...
I mean, gyms are closed here, so...
The Open's been written that can be done at home, just with some minimal equipment. So any games athlete is going to be able to get set up at home to do it. Even if they have to borrow equipment, whatever it is. But when it comes to the quarterfinals, if people don't have access to gyms, there's a chance that you could see some big name athletes who just, they can't do anything. If their country's locked down and they can't travel, and they have no access to a set of rings or whatever it is, do they change the programming? Do they just say, well, it is what it is and you're not going to be able to compete this year? It's going to be...
I mean, I think that, even with, I don't know, obviously the rules are different everywhere, but, people who are looking to get to the games and go to compete at that level, the assumption is they're going to get done whatever they need to get done, right? You know, they're going to do a Ben Smith and put the rings in the tree. And by the way, guys, if you have not watched Ben Smith's training videos from 2010, 2011, you should go and definitely do it. It's probably more entertaining than any crappy YouTube vlog that is going around these days.
You get to see baby Alex Smith as well in the background.
Yeah, like it was like juggling on a unicycle or something like that. But yeah,
actually, if we're on this point, go and watch the Rogue versus Again Faster Lake Tahoe series. If we're going deep on old school.
That's great. I remember the conversation that they all had, where it was like, you know, this was after the 2010 games. I think Graham Holmberg basically won because Froning couldn't do rope climbs.
Yep.
And everyone was like, so what do you guys do for your training? And how many times a week do you train? And you had like, you had a couple of CrossFit purists and people that worked on the level 1 staff who were like, just do it one time a day, train with my class 3 times a week. I do 5-3-1. That's all I do. And then they were like, what do you do, Miko? Miko's like, I wake up in the morning, I run through the Finnish woods, and then I go and I do weightlifting, and then I do this and everything. But yeah, that's a cool video series. That's a lot more entertaining than the YouTube crap that's around these days. Although that sometimes is entertaining. But oh my God, look at the games back then was a lot simpler. Times were a lot simpler. But the getting back to this year and the competition for this year, I mean, what do you think a couple of key points for people who are looking to, what are a couple of key things that you're going to be doing with people's training now in the lead up to this, to the Open, to the quarterfinals, like compared to what they were doing late last year? Those people have got gym access, you know, and not necessarily the people just doing burpees and dumbbell snatches at home.
So for a lot of people, for those people that are wanting to qualify for the semifinals, and we're assuming they qualify for quarterfinals, right now it's looking at what is going to stop you from qualifying for semifinals. What could come up in a workout that is going to be the reason you don't make it? For some people, that's going to be gymnastics or gymnastics volume. You know, maybe the last open workout of 2020 with the wall balls, the rowing, and the ring muscle ups, the kind of choose your own rep scheme workout. It's like maybe that volume of ring muscle ups is the reason that you're not going to qualify. Well, we have time now. Let's work on that. We have until April to get that ready. For some people, it's just kind of keeping things ticking along, waiting to ramp up the engine work. You know, maybe their strength, their gymnastics, everything is pretty solid, but they just need to be able to really get their engine in check. It's like a slow build for now, but we don't want to be peaking come the Open in March. We want to be peaking in April. So it's using the Open as a way to ramp up the conditioning. And right now it's just avoiding burning out, and it's keeping everything ticking along. So for me right now, it's identifying what is stopping people qualifying. What is the one reason that you're not going to make it to semifinals this year? And let's just drill it and work at it and get it to the point where if that does come up, you're in a position to do well at it.
Yeah. I think one thing that is key to point out is that for those people who are used to training for the Open and that being sort of like something they really get ready for, you can view this year as a little bit of, you know, as sort of John was saying, you know, the first part of the Open is the score doesn't count to the second part. So if you're fairly confident in getting to that point, you can, you know, the stress is not as high as it was for the 5 weeks previously in the Open. You've got 3 weeks where, yeah, there's going to be a bit of stress. You're probably going to be on your phone looking at the leaderboard a little bit more often. You're probably going to be a bit more invested. You might be doing the workouts twice. But, you know, as John said, if you are going to be doing it and you're confident, you probably should have it as just part of your training and using it as a bit of an opportunity to sharpen that competitive, just being really super clinical on workouts, executing game plans and stuff like that is a good opportunity to do that. And I do think that there's a lot to be gained from that as well. A lot of the time when, people are sort of taking their first serious open, they end up going into it, and there's I think more to gain from just going through it logistically well than there is from really, really making leaps and bounds in fitness and stuff like that. So I think that, you can use that first part to get yourself ready. We don't know what's going to come up in the quarters yet. But yeah, you probably want to be going through simple open workouts that are within that, the equipment list that's sort of put out there. You probably want to just not necessarily to like try and beat your time. Let's say 17-1, right? The burpee box jump over and dumbbell snatches, but you want to be just ready to do that type of stuff. If that's, for me, that's a workout I don't like. So if I was going to be doing the open this year, I'd probably want to have a couple of touches on something like that beforehand at intensity, so that if something like that does come up in the open, then I'm probably going to be a bit more comfortable in it. So you probably want to look at like some of the real simple, longer endurance style workouts with minimal equipment, and you probably want to do some of that type of stuff if you want to be as ready as you can for the open. But then also realizing that, like, if your goal is quarterfinals, you're confident in doing that, you're probably going to have a workout that might be sort of this choose your own adventure type thing, and you've got to be able to practice those scenarios and be okay with, okay, how am I going to execute this? And it might be worth doing a couple of different styles of workouts that are potentially going to come up, whether it's like, sort of thinking off the top of my head, like a 19.2, 16.2 with heavy squat cleans, loads of toes to bar and double unders, or whether it's the heavy snatches and chest to bar from 17.3, I think. You probably want to reserve that type of practice for like later and closer towards the open, because that's going to be leading into the quarters. But yeah, I think the making sure that the intensity is fairly high, reducing volume, and if I've had a couple of conversations with people who just want to be like, oh, let's just do loads of EMOMs of all these different movements, and I'm like, yeah, probably want to do AMRAPs of those movements with other movements. So just remember, it's time to get in with the uncomfortable couplet, triplet, as Mr. Fitzgerald says, shit.
Yeah. I think we're definitely going to see some of those couplets in the first section. I keep thinking back to that dumbbell front squat burpee over bar workout that was followed by the max clean from a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was just an all-out sprint, basically, for 4 minutes if you could handle it.
Not fun.
No.
I think that there is a place for that type of workout though in the open, because I think that's something that's just been left a little bit, and there is definitely a lot of people out there that they might not do they can sort of hold their own in that, say, 15 to 20 minute zone, but like they are like leaps and bounds ahead of those people around them in that 15 20 minute zone when it comes to a workout that's sub 5 minutes, because that's very, very hard. And I think that is a different type of intensity that people aren't necessarily used to tapping into unless you really train for the sport.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today. Obviously, so much nicer without Todd. Just for fun, share this with your friends. Have as many people listen as possible. Download it. Subscribe to our podcast. Let's throw the metrics off and make a real strong case for Todd not coming back on the podcast.
Share this with everyone, guys. Share this with family, people who don't know anything about CrossFit, because they're most likely going to be very interested in what we have to say about the Open and about the games this year.
If you're a programmer, maybe set up some kind of bot thing that can just download this millions of times and listen to it millions of times. That would be really useful for us in this campaign against Todd.
Thanks for listening. While you're here, go ahead and head over to your podcast player, subscribe to the show, give it a rating, give it a review, all that good stuff. You can also go ahead and click through to the show notes where you can find out more about us at legionsc.com, and also follow us on Instagram at legion.sc.